Okay, good evening and welcome to the September 26, 2023 Hanson Select Board meeting, which is being recorded by Whitman Hanson Community Access Television. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have a jam-packed agenda as per usual, but before we hit that, Mrs. Rain, may I prevail upon you to read the announcements?
Certainly. We are looking for citizens at large to become members of the following committees: Board of Health, Bylaw Committee, Cable and Internet Committee, Community Preservation Committee, Capital Improvement Committee, Cultural Council, Energy Committee, Historical Commission, the Master Plan Steering Subcommittee, Memorial Day and Patriotic Observance Committee, Nathaniel Thomas Mill Committee, Recreation Committee, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Volunteer applications may be found on the town website, www.hanson-ma.gov, or by calling the Select Board's office at 781-293-2131. Special town meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 2nd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. at the Hanson Middle School. Childcare will be available at no charge. The special town meeting warrant can be found on the town website at www.hanson-ma.gov. The Great Pumpkin Classic Car Show is planned. Whitman and Hanson Dollars for Scholars will be hosting the 5th annual Great Pumpkin Classic Car Show from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sunday, October 8th at the Whitman Hanson Regional High School, followed by a trophy ceremony at 2 p.m. The rain date will be Sunday, October 15th. Proceeds from the event will benefit Whitman and Hanson Dollars for Scholars. Admission fee is $5 per person or $15 per family for the event, which will include a kids' costume contest beginning at 12 noon, music, raffles, food trucks, and Halloween candy. The entry fee for vehicles in the show is $10 per show car. Dash plaques will be issued for the first 50 cars registered. Show car entry begins at 8 a.m. Awards will be given in the following categories: Best of Show, Best in Decade, Pre-40s, Best in Decade 40s, Best in Decade 50s, Best in Decade 60s, Best in Decade 70s, Best in Decade 80s, Best in Decade 90s, and Best Special Interest Car and Best Decorated Car. The event is being sponsored by Platinum Auto in Abington, Sparky's Automotive, and Trillium Fuel. For more information, please contact Lisa Green at 781-293-2131 or email lgreen@hanson-ma.gov. Upcoming meetings: the Select Board, October 2nd, 2023, 6 p.m. October Special Town Meeting, October 2nd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. October Special Town Meeting, October 3rd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. if needed. Strategic Planning Session is October 17th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take a few things out of order. Specifically, we are going to take the appointment of Liana Gagnon, and if I have just slaughtered your name, I apologize, as the Council on Aging's Assistant Program Coordinator. You've all got Liana's application in front of you, in which her references have been checked by 3 reputable folks, or I should say her references are from 3 reputable folks and have been checked. And she's got great experience. She also has been volunteering at the senior center. And I don't know, Ms. Collins, did you want to say a few words about?
If I could.
Yeah.
Liana has been volunteering for well over a year now, in particular with a number of our frailer elders. And so we have seen her growth over the year. She is a longtime Hanson resident with both sets of grandparents living in town. It is wonderful that we have this opportunity. Our formula grant increased this year, and that's what we're using for funding for this. It increased because the amount of seniors over 60 has jumped well over 1,000 people.
Wow.
In the last decade. So we're using the 2020 census, federal census. And I couldn't think what better use of the money than to bring somebody in like Liana, who is now presently in college, landing with hopes on a human services, going into the human services industry. I think it'll just bring a wonderful wealth of exuberance, youth, and compassion to the center. So I very much appreciate you considering appointing her.
Did anybody have any questions for Mary or for Liana? Did you want to say a few words, Liana? If you don't, you don't need to, but...
I'm just excited to start working and keep working with everyone there, so.
Okay, great. If there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to appoint Liana Kathleen Gagnon as the Assistant Program Coordinator at the Senior Center.
So moved.
With an effective date of...
Tomorrow, if possible.
Oh, okay.
You got it.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
Kids start soon enough.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, well, congratulations. We look forward to seeing you.
Congrats.
All right.
Well deserved.
Okay, we're now going to move to the fireworks discussion, because it seems like we've got more than a sufficient number of people in order to discuss that. Ms. Green, I'm going to cue it up to you, and then you can introduce the players. And
So, as we all know, the fireworks site has been a topic of discussion in the town of Hanson for many years. Also, the town of Hanover is part of this. Just recently, the cleanup at the fireworks site has entered into Hanson territory, which brought to our attention the need to pay attention to this cleanup. We have with us the EPA, members from the Environmental Protection Agency, and members of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection that are here with us tonight. The funds for the cleanup for the site have been through a trust on the Massachusetts contingency plan. Those funds are drying up, and it's been discovered over time that more funding is required to continue cleanup of the site. So we have the folks from the EPA here and the DEP to talk about the site and possibly further action, the condition of the site and where the site will be once the money does run out and until we receive additional money.
okay, and I also want to recognize that this certainly is not the first time we've paid attention to this, because I want to make sure that we give credit to our Conservation Commission and to our health agent, and I know you've been on calls, and we've had outside counsel that we've hired, so there's been a lot of laboring behind the scenes,
Yes.
Perhaps not, really, publicly, because there hasn't been a lot to really talk about until, there hasn't been a decision that we've been asked to make until now. So I just want to clarify that, because I do want to give credit where credit is due to our Conservation Department and Health Agent. Okay, so I don't know who wants to kick off this conversation? And if you could just introduce yourself and...
We have a presentation.
Sure, that's great, yeah. Just introduce yourself, what agency you represent, and we'll take it from there.
Hi everyone, I'm Mandy Lau. I am from the Environmental Protection Agency.
All right, sure, I can introduce myself. I'm Diane Baxter, and I'm from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Wayside Cleanup.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kiley. I'm with Mass Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Wayside Cleanup. I've been working on the fireworks project along with my colleague Len Pinot, who many of you I'm sure may have met at some past meetings. He's not able to make it tonight, but we have, as you had indicated, we've been having monthly meetings with the towns, and usually there's a representation from Hanson on those meetings as well, being kept abreast of the project status, including the trust. And thank you for having us here today to talk to you more about the project and some potential paths forward.
Yep, and I'll introduce the folks behind me really quickly. So behind me we have Bob Cantarullo. He is the branch manager of our remediation branch. And then we have Chao Vu. She is my supervisor. And then we have Alyssa Sierra, who's also a site assessment manager, who's helping me on the site. And online, I believe I saw Kate Melanson and Charlotte Gray. They are our community involvement coordinators.
And do we have our council on the phone, Ms. Green?
They are with us, yes.
Did you want to introduce them?
It is Michael Campanelli. He is with Beverage and Diamond.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And I just also want to introduce Gil Amato, our health agent, and Dr. Skellinger, our conservation agent, and Phil Clemens, who is our chair of conservation.
Great.
And of course, our name tags are here, so you know who we are. Okay.
Thank you. So I'll quickly go over today's goals for the meeting, introductions. We want to recap our last meetings, and then Mass DEP will go more in depth of the site history, funding, and risks and completed and ongoing work at the site. And then I'll go over what Superfund actually is and the MPL listing process, and then go more specifically into what the actual pre-remedial activities leading up to listing and the outreach and engagement involved. So we met with some of you all in June. Those were our initial meetings, and then we had a joint meeting with all three towns, Pembroke, Hanover, and Hanson, together in July. And last week, we just met with Hanover for this same type of meeting for the select board members, and I just want to add that Mass DEP continues to meet with Hanover and Hanson on a monthly basis about the site. So,
All right. I'm going to play the role tonight of Len Pinode, who's been the longtime project manager. I work in management in the division that oversees the Superfund sites in Massachusetts and also evaluates listing new sites. So first, just a little bit about background and status. Mass DEP and the towns have been working together toward the same goal for many years, and that's to get the site cleaned up. Historical activities at the site included research, development, manufacture, and testing of munitions and pyrotechnics for the U.S. government, commercial manufacture of civilian fireworks, and other non-munitions manufacturing. And manufacturing activities occurred on site from 1907 to 1970. A number of different contaminants were used at the site, including, or potential contaminants, I guess you call them, mercury, lead, organic solvents, and propellants, and explosives were used in the manufacturing operations. And those came to be located on the site as a result of disposal and just, sort of dirty operations practices over the years. So a tremendous amount of work has been done over the years to identify areas of soil and sediment contamination, as well as surface water and groundwater contamination, and also to address the unexploded ordnance or munitions that have been found. Mercury has been detected in sediment, soil, groundwater, and fish tissue. Lead and other metals, as well as volatile organic chemicals, have been detected in soil, groundwater, and sediment. And munitions and explosives have been found in both the soil and in factory pond. Okay, so the risks from the contaminants that have been found, the first thing I want to say is there has been no contaminants from the site found in public water supplies or in private wells near the site. No groundwater impacts. The types of risks that have been found are really three main types of risk. First, potential risks to people from direct contact with contaminated soil and sediment, and these are being addressed temporarily as cleanup operations continue by restricting access to the southern part of the site, as well as restricting access to factory pond. Impacted soils are also being excavated and properly disposed from the site. Second type of risks we've identified are risks to people from fish eating, risk to people and fish-eating birds and wildlife from ingestion of fish that has contaminants in its tissue. A fish advisory is in place in factory ponds to address this risk for the time being, and you can see the different signs there on the left. Finally, there are risks to people from the munitions items that have been found in the southern portion of the site and in Factory Pond. And again, Factory Pond is, the access is restricted to address that risk temporarily. Okay, so since about 2017, there have been removals or actions taken to address munitions at the site. And now, as of August last month, over 190,000 munitions items have been removed from the site, about 17.75 tons of items. You can see some of the pictures of what was found there on the left. Over 21,000 items have contained explosives and as a result posed a safety hazard and were destroyed on site by the Mass State Police. There has been quite a bit of progress toward the cleanup. 14 of 21 areas of munitions, soil, and sediment contamination in the southern portion of the site have been investigated and cleaned up under Mass DP waste site cleanup regulations. Current site activities include off-site disposal of contaminated soil and asbestos, munitions destruction and disposal, soil sampling, and site equipment demobilization. We expect these activities to continue for about another year until October of 2024. Once the activities cease, the site will be secured and access restrictions maintained until the site investigation and cleanup activities can resume. Okay, and I'm going to hand it over to Kathy for some financial discussion.
Hi, thank you. So, as Diane mentioned, we've been doing a good amount of work out at the site for the past number of years. And as a result of a bankruptcy settlement, the department received funds, and those funds were put into a trust, an expendable trust, that can only be used for cleanup actions at the site. And that's called the Tronics Incorporated Trust. So what I've done here is just present sort of, what it started at and what's been spent from it and what the bottom line is. The work that's been done, let me back up for a second. So through that bankruptcy settlement, we have received between the contributions and interest approximately $73.84 million. Now, since 2015, there's been work at the site for the Phase 2 rebaselining, the Phase 3 work done under the MCP, the Mass DEP regs, as well as all of the IRA work to address the public risk, public hazards from the munitions. And that's been approximately dispersed about $53.58 million. There's some additional work that's needed out at the site that's been prioritized, but it hasn't yet been billed, and that is another about $5 million. And we know that there's some more work to be done to address the asbestos that's currently at the site, and that'll result in about another $5 million. Ultimately, that'll leave a balance of about $10.21 million. These funds will be able to be used toward site the site shutdown, as well as site security until the cleanup action are able to be resumed. And the other thing I want to point out, that $10 million, if we go back to what's been projected for the cleanup of the site, both the contamination in the sediment and the remaining munitions above Factory Pond Dam, as well as potentially addressing any of the contamination in the Indian Head River corridor, that's estimated to be over $200 million. So that's the discrepancy we have between the needed costs and the costs that remain from this trust. So, thank you. So, as a result of this, the department requested EPA involvement to really consider an option for cleaning up the site and how we might be able to proceed. As I said, the Tronics Trust had remaining funds were insufficient to be able to complete the required response actions. The Commonwealth was discussing settlement with the cooperating parties and the potentially responsible parties, including the U.S. Department of Defense. However, there was ultimately, they did not agree to come to a plan for cleanup of the entire site, and ultimately we could not come to an agreement on the response cost to address all of the site. And so given the projected costs for the remaining cleanup and the status of the settlement negotiations, DEP reached out to the EPA as a possible option for funding the rest of the cleanup of the site through the Superfund National Priorities listing process.
Great, thank you, Kathy and Diane, for some background information on the site. So I'll just quickly go over what Superfund is for those who don't know. It is the informal name for the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. It allows EPA to clean up contaminated sites. It also forces the parties responsible for the contamination to either perform cleanups themselves or reimburse the government for EPA-led cleanup work. The goals of Superfund is to protect human health and the environment by cleaning up contaminated sites, make responsible parties pay for cleanup work, involve communities in the Superfund process, and return these sites back to productive use. I also want to note that at the end, we'll have a link to our site page where we have a community guide on what Superfund is, where it explains like the entire Superfund process and also lists out ways community members can get involved. So what is the NPL, National Priorities List? It is a national list of sites that EPA determines require further detailed investigation and potential cleanup action in accordance with CERCLA. Investigations at these NPL sites determine whether long-term threats to human health and environment exist, and where needed, comprehensive strategy to address these threats are implemented. So why add the National Fireworks site to the NPL? Sites on the NPL are subject to detailed investigation and cleanup where warranted, and only sites on the NPL are eligible to receive the Superfund resources for cleanup. Federal resources can include monetary support as well as expertise and staffing, and absent of these resources, cleanup strategies may not be able to be pursued. Given the projected cost for remaining cleanup and status of settlement negotiations, Mass DEP reached out to us to address the site through NPL listing. So how is a site added to the National Priorities List? It's added through federal rulemaking. We need a letter of concurrence from the governor, and from then the site is proposed to the NPL, where we have a 60-day public comment period. The site is then finalized onto the NPL upon consideration of public comments received. This is just an infographic of the entire Superfund process. As you can see, where it is circled in red, that is the path that the National Fireworks site would take. And I want to note that the arrow is where once we get past there, that's where federal resources can be expended. And after that, you can see that's where we investigate and actually have an action in place. So during that, before that, we can't really take the step to clean up the site until we get past that. Order of upcoming activities for the National Fireworks site if we do pursue listing. Right now we are conducting a site reassessment, so that is to review the data that has been collected between 2012 when EPA was last at the site, when we originally wanted to list the site, and now and from then we want to determine what data gaps are there and what available reports that Mass DEP produced. And then next step would be to conduct an expanded site inspection. Just want to note that between the site reassessment and the expanded site inspection, we are going to send out access agreements to some property owners so that we can actually get on site. So the expanded site inspection is to, again, address those data gaps, sample, and prepare for the hazard ranking system package. So all that data, we will develop a HRS package, and that takes about a year. And we consult with headquarters and technical experts to ensure that the information we collected is adequate and adequate enough to propose the site onto the MPL.
Excuse me, what happens if a homeowner doesn't give you permission to access? Do you just do contiguous properties, or?
We'll try to work around it, but we have attorneys and stuff that work with the property owners to help better understand the process and why their cooperation is needed for us to help clean up the site.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sorry. So after the HRS package developed, we work with Mass DEP to get a letter of concurrence from Governor Healy to make sure she is on board with listing. So this is one of the main reasons why we're here today and meeting with all the towns. We want to make sure that there is no opposition from the towns to list the site onto the MPL. So once we get that letter from the governor, we propose the site to the MPL. Currently, we are on a biannual schedule to propose sites, so spring and fall, March and September. So once the site is finalized, after the 60-day comment period, the site is finalized on the MPL, our remedial program will launch their own investigation where they'll fully characterize the site and look at different options and strategies for cleanup.
And are you looking, I understand that you don't want opposition. I don't think that's going to be the case here. Are you looking for us to also try to leverage our legislative partners? And do you want letters of support from us, or will you get to this later in the presentation? I don't know.
No, that's a great question. So there's no requirement for towns to send anything or sign anything, but I mean, those letters of encouragement will help out the situation.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to list out our involvement in New England. Our most recent listing was the Lower Neponset River in Milton and Boston. It was listed in 2022. Currently, that makes 41 Superfund sites in Massachusetts, 123 in New England, and 1,833 Superfund sites nationally. Lastly, we have a QR code. I talked about that Superfund community guide. We also have this presentation uploaded onto that website as well for everybody to review. That is the location where we'll be uploading any documents that are publicly available. And I just want to emphasize that throughout this whole process, we do have our community involvement coordinators are online and will be present for any other get-togethers throughout the whole step of the process. So we had our 3 individual meetings, a joint meeting, and these meetings with the select board members. And I think moving forward, our community involvement coordinators will reach out and see what best works for your community, and any strategies and collaborative efforts will be great. And here is our contact information.
And are you going to, or maybe this is part of the strategy, are you going to advertise in local newspapers and on cable and Facebook, et cetera, the QR code, and, you know, really pump up the volume on we want public comments, or what's the methodology for delivering that request for public comments?
Yeah, we definitely have, I don't know if Kate or Charlotte can chime in, but we definitely do newspaper postings and whatever the community wants us to do, what other methods of communication.
Okay, we can certainly, I think Ms. Green put something on our website. I mean, you know, redirecting to that.
Right. We can also, I know it was just a QR code, but we can definitely send the actual link to Ms. Green to disseminate.
Okay.
That's Charlotte. She's our community involvement coordinator.
No, I was just going to hop on to support you, Mandy, and say we have some pretty standard ways we do community involvement. As you said, we'll take out a public notice. We'll continually update the website. We work with the towns often to make sure that the community is updated and is aware of what's happening. We really try to tailor all of our community involvement to the specific towns and the communities, and we'll defer to you as well for what's best.
Okay, great. Do we have a minute for, in case there's any questions, just because this is a lot to digest, and I know there's a lot to, okay, all right.
Could I ask how long it will take to resume the cleanup? I mean, what's the timeline here? We're waiting for money from the Superfund people, I guess? Is this going to take years to restart, or are we going to continue with the cleanup, or what?
I'm gonna invite Bob up here to help me with some of the questions, but, we would need to first list the site onto the list to even get Superfund resources to start cleanup.
Right, and so that's probably the point. Even when we propose the site to the list, we would start assigning people from my staff, and project manager, really start catching up. There's a lot to learn about this site, obviously, the work that state's done. But invariably, we probably have to go backwards before we can go forward.
The reason I'm asking it, the only reason I'm asking this is because I've been, as a person, following this for many, many years, decades, we can say. So to think that we're just now at the point where we're going to go to this route, it should have been done a long time ago. That's why I'm a little impatient to know that it's going to go.
Yeah, so I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good timeline
Right.
because we're sort of coming in forward now.
The other thing the other number that, there's a 200 million number down there. I believe the last people that came and talked to us said it was closer to 400 million. Just saying.
Well, I would say that we have less confidence because there's been less sampling done downstream of the river. I think what we could say, we knew it was going to be more than 200. We don't know what the amount is going to be. And truthfully, the first thing that EPA is, I'm not going to speak for EPA, but one would think they're going to do their own investigation, their own characterization of the full nature and extent of contamination. They'll be, and I'll let you guys answer it instead of me answering for you.
Yeah.
But the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is we were making some estimates on costs with the limited information that we've had, knowing that this is sort of like a worst case scenario, and we don't know what EPA might do, but either way, it's well beyond what's available for, that we had in the trust. And really the focus then became how can we best make sure that it's as protective as possible to the public, to be able to get it in a good, safe spot for the shutdown and the hiatus until the cleanup starts up again.
And can you help us understand, I think we had heard a couple of, when the last time we talked about this, a couple of different methodologies of cleanup, because, you know, there's several shades of gray in terms of what you can do. There's like a full remediation where you drain everything and then and dredge and all this. So when you're giving the $200,000 price tag, what are we talking about?
Well, I want to...
What did I say?
200,000.
Oh, I wish, yeah.
We wish it was that much.
200 million, yeah.
I think, I'm not sure if you're referring back to a few years ago when there was the presentations that Tetra Tech had been making.
Yes, yes.
At that point, they were focusing on the remediation plans for the contamination above Factory Pond Dam. And so that was focusing on both the sediment contamination and the unexploded ordnance.
No, we've had somebody since then come and talk to us about it, the point past factory, the point that's in
Drink water,
Hanson.
damming the drink water, draining that, and then all the way down, dredging. I mean, they outlined a fairly significant plan.
Yeah.
That might have, I'm not sure if that was the plan for if the dams were going to be removed. Yes. I'm not sure if that was the presentation.
No, it wasn't. It was specifically about the contamination, and they were talking about how they would stop up the Drinkwater River so that all that soil could be remediated out and then relay stream beds, etc. And then
and I just remember because Mr. Clemens was very, I guess agitated.
This was within my timeline.
Concerned.
Yes, within the past 2 years.
And the North River Watershed had come here, and they were concerned about that approach. So that's why I'm asking, what is the 200 million?
So, okay.
Yeah.
So again, I'm without knowing specifically the presentation, and there was some. Let me back up. So. There was through a permitting process for one of the areas upstream of the Factory Pond Dam that has a considerable amount of munitions. It's referred to as a high metal density area. And I'm not sure if that was the presentation that you're referring to. So it's hard for me to speak to it specifically, but so I'm not, if that were the case, at one point there was some permitting in place for various, there were different options that were being considered for how best to address that contamination to get the munitions, and they were looking at various options. Do you drain the pond? Do you not drain the pond? Do you separate it? So that, again, without knowing specifically what you're referring to, I want to go back to just...
No, fair enough, but so the two...
I want to go back to the question then, so I just wanted to put that to, sort of leave that as, without knowing, we can't really speak to details of that. However,
understandable.
The question of the 200 million, that was coming specifically from, you've got the phase 3 that was produced. That was the remedial plan that the cooperating parties consultant Tetra Tech put together. There was an estimate of approximately, give me a sec while I get my note out, if I have that in front of me. That was approximately a range of like up to 107 million. Then just to do that high metal density area, that could cost somewhere close to 75 million. And so right there, you've got, you know, probably close to 200 right there, and that doesn't even take into account any of the contamination downstream of Factory Pond Dam. And that could be, if you know, there's a lot of different ways to approach contamination downstream, but, you know, you really have to. We just had very, very large estimates from the standpoint of if we were to do the exact same thing that was being done upstream, it may cost another, you know, $1 million. So what we have confidence in is that we know it's going to be more than 200 million.
That's why I'm asking.
That's why I'm saying it now. We have a good handle on that. Going forward, those numbers could very well change based on what EPA's decision is in terms of how they'll further refine, get a lot more data. There may be more or other techniques that they're choosing for remediation, and then there could be other costs associated with that. So I hope I addressed your question.
Somewhat. I guess I've got, I have a lot of questions, but I'm sure other people on the board do too. I guess to the extent that that we wave the magic wand, the governor supports it, it's on the MPL, blah, 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 we move forward and it becomes a quote-unquote Superfund site. What happens if the price tag does go up above that 200 million? Are we set in cement? Is it a fluid process? Is it the EPA's recommendation? And then my second question, kind of similarly, is up until this point, there's been, I'll say Hanson has been not treated as a full partner from the beginning in this process, and that's universally held opinion by the citizens of Hanson, that we've been a little late invited to the party, and really Hanover was driving the bus up until maybe say 3-4 years ago, and even then sort of they seem to be the ones determining things. And the reason I mention that is because we represent the citizens in the town of Hanson. And I want to make sure that we're going to have a voice and that we're going to have an ability to shape and influence the way that the EPA decides to address this in our town for our citizens. Understanding that it doesn't just impact our town and our citizens, but that's who we're voted to represent. So I just want to make sure that there's an ability for us to influence that outcome. So to the extent that there are multiple options on the table, I want to make sure that we're able to get our professional team together, conservation, our outside counsel, our health agent, et cetera, and that they've got a seat at the table and that they will be listened to in the same manner that the town of Hanover has been listened to.
Yeah, let me address that, Jim. To the extent if we switch over and we'll be working under the regulations of the Superfund program, except in very rare circumstances, for me to access that fund to fund a cleanup, we'll have to select a remedy under the National Contingency Plan, the Superfund regulations, which again, except in sort of emergency situations, require a very formal public comment process. So that's us, when you talked about cleanup options, us first doing our investigation, assessing the risks, human health and environmental risk assessment, then doing a feasibility study to decide, well, what's the range of alternatives to address whatever the problem might be. We sort of put forward what we think the best answer is, but we sort of put that whole process out to the public to say, here's our preferred remedy, what does the public think? And that public means anybody in the public. But we certainly typically have done a series of meetings, public meetings, formal public hearings, have to respond to comments, support the record with our final decision, and then we would move forward with that cleanup plan. So that takes time. Just sort of back to the
I know it
original,
takes time.
That's a heck of a process, but it's it's an effective process. And it's, so I think there's opportunities at each step of the way for that public input. A site like this probably going to break up into pieces, things we know more about, we can make early decisions on. As you get further downstream, I suspect there's more study that has to be done, and so those will sort of follow in course. The funding, I hate to say, I don't want to get quoted on, the cost doesn't matter. The cost matters. We want to make sure we make cost-effective decisions. What the federal program gives you that the state doesn't is the backstop of this Superfund trust fund. The funding, it's basically this trust fund is fed from chemical feedstock taxes and petroleum product taxes, and we are able to access that fund for cleanups of sites like this. Obviously, we're also going to go back to the parties that the state's been working with as well, making sure that the polluter pays, if you will. But we always have, as long as we stay in business, I guess, right? We will have the backstop of the trust fund as well.
So that was one of my other questions, to the extent that the potential responsible party wouldn't cooperate and reimburse, that isn't going to necessarily hold up what the EPA is able to do.
We could decide to go forward with taxpayer money, if you will, and then pursue later if there's an ability to pursue for sort of cost recovery.
Okay, and from soup to nuts, from this point on, you guys, I know these things aren't precise by any stretch of the imagination. Are we talking a year? By the time the governor, public comments, NPL, et cetera, all of the things before you can actually take a shovel to the dirt and start doing whatever needs to be done? How long are you talking about it before it becomes an actual EPA NPL?
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, so one of the slides earlier, we are currently doing a site reassessment, so we're just going through all the data that's been collected since 2012 and now. So then we have to address the data gaps, and then we have to do our own sampling to see what changed when we first did the HRS package in 2012, and we're going to update that, and then depending on when we finish the HRS package, depending if the next scheduled proposal is in spring or fall. It really depends on how quickly we can get started with the process.
So let's say worst case scenario. Are we talking?
Well, yeah, a couple of years, 1 or 2 years.
A couple of years?
And that's to start the Superfund site, but in the meantime, you are going to be spending time making this we have now safe so that people aren't getting into that.
Correct.
Right.
And that's, we have the funds that remain in our the Tronics Trust that the Commonwealth,
Which is only 10 million.
That's right. And so, but the intention, and we will be working and continuing to work with the public safety officials in the towns to make sure that they're in agreement with the plan for, we're finishing up, and one of the big areas that we're planning to do in the springtime is the asbestos removal. So there's been, throughout the site, there's been a lot of asbestos co-located with the material, the contamination, and the munitions, and so that material will be removed from the site to be, make sure it's protected for the public. It will also, the site is intended to be secure, then essentially there shouldn't be anything sort of on the surface that people can get in touch with
Right.
that maybe pose a risk. And then just making sure it's secure, also having funds available in case something happens, if somebody trespasses or does something. We just don't know. We just want to have some funds available in case there's something that needs to be done in an immediate action. We'll be able to do that. And any of the funds that are left at the end would then still be able to be used for any continued cleanup at the site.
I'm not hearing any more explosions lately, have they?
Well, the work they finished up the Marsh Upland area and the restoration there. And so right now, we're not doing any more intrusive work at the moment. As you know, the last few weeks, we haven't had any, or the Tetra Tech hasn't scheduled any of the...
No, I haven't heard any. I hear it very loudly.
Yeah, so, and they're, just so folks are aware too, there'll probably be a low hiatus for a number of months this year as well, and then it'll just be ramping up, getting the site ready to do that asbestos work. So they still are processing the soil and processing munitions that are out there, but I think they're waiting to get sort of get to a point to do them, and then it may be again a few weeks before it happens again.
Anybody else? Joe?
Yeah, I guess my question is what if, for us, we really are adamant about trying to get this on the list. What if another town doesn't want it on the list, and what happens for your history of doing all this? Are there any roadblocks that you potentially foresee? And then how would a town like ours trying to get our, voice heard, how could we kind of overcome those roadblocks if there are going to be some, potentially?
Well, I think the main thing is, well, first, you don't need to send a letter of support, but certainly letters of support would be helpful. Ultimately, we as DEP want to convince the governor, want to be able to convince the governor that it's the right thing to do. And I mean, my thought would be that if you feel strongly about it and want to communicate with the governor, to let the governor know, that would be the best thing. There isn't veto power per se from any one town.
Okay.
It's just a matter of whether the governor agrees that it's the right thing to proceed.
Gotcha.
But we hope to have support with the three communities, obviously.
We are too. We're really hoping for that.
We are too.
Right.
Yep.
Have you ever had a situation in which you had towns kind of having difference of opinions of adding it to the list?
I'm not really sure, aside from this site some years ago, but I'm relatively new to DEP, so.
This site has always had one town that did not want to have anything done about it.
Yeah.
And that town is going to have to get over it because it's time. It's time.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, when we go through, and you guys are doing a great job, obviously, and I really appreciate you being here and listening to us and getting our, really getting our voice heard. It means a lot to this community. I guess when it comes down to like public comment and things like that, I guess one of my worries is that, squeakier wheels trying to get it off the list will prevail, and I'm just kind of curious what the process is to make sure that that the public comment piece is that our voice is getting weighted as much as a larger community might, and what, how do you kind of designate who makes the decision, or how you come to your decision on what the public really wants in terms of whether to list it, how the remedy should happen, things like that. Because I get what you're saying, is like everybody has a voice and everybody can come and see it. I just want to, we're different geographically, there's different populations, things like that. And I just want to make sure that, when we're going through this public comment, that we're heard kind of loud and clear, which I know you will. I'm just more curious about the process.
Yeah, I think we would, sort of hearing this, I think as we move forward, we'd understand that we need to sort of learn about these three communities.
Yep.
and the broader sort of regional community, and make sure we sort of consider that as our folks said on the phone, you sort of tailor out community involvement efforts
Yep.
towards that, and make sure that you definitely feel like you have a voice.
Appreciate that.
So you mentioned a few times about the community, getting the three communities together in the past. Is there another plan to get the three communities together? Like, what's the next step as far as meetings like this go? Is it going to be another one, or are we just kind of?
We are going to meet.
Yeah, we're meeting with Pembroke in October. So then I think from there, our community involvement folks will see what the three communities want in terms of meeting with like more residents and more joint meeting.
Yeah, certainly, if you have input one way or another, how you'd like to see it, I think we'd like to hear what each of the communities wants to see. So far, we've chosen this path, I think, really as a result of what input we got from the first meeting with the three communities. You know, we heard that the select board meetings should be the next step. So
I think we want to be open about the process, obviously. We obviously don't want anyone just sort of read in the paper, proposed for listing.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
But we don't, as you can tell, it's I want to raise expectations because we don't have a lot of the answers yet. It's really just we're kind of announcing we want to get started, sort of starting this process out. So we're trying to find the right balance there as well.
Fantastic.
Yep. Mr. George, anything?
No.
Okay. Mr. Clements?
I just would like to voice agreement with the word you've heard once or twice, which is regional. I think the Hanson Conservation Commission and people with whom we communicate want this to be recognized as something which doesn't recognize political boundaries. There's a watershed which is somewhat extensive and really very prominent, excuse me, in terms of its quality and its value to not just the immediate towns in this region, but to the state and New England and go as far as you like. And I feel, as someone who's lived in Hanson all his life and who's paid a lot of attention to watersheds, including this one, that our part of this region has been understudied and has not yet sufficiently been characterized to see to what extent this problem or something related may be there. And it seems like financially and in other ways, there's likely only one path towards correcting that. And I think we hear a growing sense of unity, not just in Hanson, but the region, towards supporting that pathway, towards at least the steps towards potential NPL listing. And anything that Hanson can do, I think, towards helping to get the data needed to define where the problem is and what to do and what the recommended solution would be. Many of us stand ready to help with that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Clements. Well put. Mr. Amato, Dr. Skellender, did you want to chime in with anything?
I'd like to say a couple of things. I know that the EPA wanted this meeting to ensure that they could get the support of Hanson. They also had a similar meeting in Hanover last week. It's very important that the people of Hanson participate in that, and it's too bad that there are so few of us here. I don't think the meeting was very well advertised. The importance of the cleanup to Hanson is primarily in the lower part of the lake and in the river downstream. There are another 4 towns downstream who are potentially impacted by this effort, and there's no indication that they're included in this process so far. And they should be. I know that the North and South River Watershed Association is concerned about that, and I don't know if there's anyone here from that.
I don't see anybody.
But
Oh, well, you're our representative though, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important that they be heard from. The problem for Hanson and the downstream towns is the contamination in the setting. And in the 25 years that we've been working on this effort, at least 25,
At least.
probably more, not one spoonful of contamination has been removed from the water. It's all been done on the land, in Hanover. And I don't know that, and I'm not trying to imply that that's wrong, because the conditions problem over there is a big problem, an important problem to fix. But from our standpoint, going forward, the water sediment has to be addressed. And I think the only way to address it is through the EPA, NPL. And I think that Hanson has just got to support that.
Mr. Amaro, can I just chime in for 1 second? Dr. Scaliger, what you said is important, which is that I think we thought of this as part of our select board meeting, not a public meeting. I think that's the way that this was an update for the select board. But I'm wondering, would you folks be willing if we scheduled a sort of a public information meeting? Not a forum, you know, similar to what I attended one in Hanover a few years ago. I think it was pre-COVID. I don't know. It's a blur. COVID and just before is a big blur. But it was, there was somebody from the Department of Public Health there to talk about cancer rates, blah, blah, blah. It was a whole host of people, and it was very informational. People could get up and talk about what their concerns were or ask questions. And the reason I think it's important is that if the next step is to get feedback from the public, right, we'll get better feedback if we have an educated public. And if we give people an opportunity to get educated, I think we'll all be the better for that. So, you know, I hate to sort of prevail upon you guys and ask you on the spot, but if we're able to have Ms. Green coordinate something, perhaps up at, like, say, Hanson Middle School, you know, and just have you guys as sort of a panel presenting whatever you think that the average person should know. I think that that will really help us get better quality feedback from people. Does that make sense? Are you guys open to that, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, do you guys agree that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay. All right, so Ms. Green, do you mind, and Ms. McDowell, do you mind?
We're on it.
Okay, awesome, I appreciate that. Mr. Amato, thoughts?
I think it's very important for this listing. The site has been the site of the unknown. We're in this situation as far as DEP interference because of what's happened on the site. Nobody knows most of the emissions and stuff that's in the water. So it's very difficult to know what's there. They try their best to do what they can do with the site with money they have, but it's not going to, the money's back. It just has to get moved.
Yep.
There's a lot of work to be done upstream of the dam. You know, there's a lot of ordinance there. You know, those ordinance have to be taken out. And I think this site is a very serious site. Being represented in the last 4 years, being on all costs, it's a very serious site, and we do need help. And you can't do it any longer. And it's a shame. It probably should have taken place years ago, but that's kind of expensive.
Yep.
It's time for the EPA to help the town of Hanson out, and the town of Hanson will stand up for itself. This is very serious.
Yes.
You know, we talk about, you know, town lines and stuff, but it's affecting many towns. And this site's got to be cleaned up, it's going to be cleaned up properly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Romano. Chief O'Brien, did you have any thoughts or concerns?
No, I will just say that I've only been chief for a short period of time, but I served as deputy for 5 or so years before that. And when Tetra Tech first started working there, Hanover Fire, actually invited myself and chief and some of our command staff oversee it. It was a massive undertaking. But since that time, the only information I've got from Mr. Romano. So information public safety-wise has not trickled down to the fire department since I've become chief, and even at least beforehand I wasn't getting it, and I think the deputy can attest to that. So that'd be great, anything that you can trickle down to us, because we're getting hearsay. Other than what Mr. Romano's brought back to us for meetings and things that he's attended, we haven't heard a lot about what's going on. So we just, again, want to see it at the table going forward, because people will call us when not so much anymore, but when it first started, when the balloons are going off and windows are rattling and stuff. For a long time, we did not know what was going on, and then Hanover Fire, we worked with them, and they would notify us before it was going on. So just looking for a little bit more open communication with it. Absolutely, I agree with what everybody else has said. I mean, this is just seeing the few times I've been over there and seen it, this is a massive undertaking, absolutely. You know, how we can get, but again, I just echo what everybody else has said, which is so good luck. Better communication is a seat at the table with it. Thank you.
Just a moment, Mr. Milisi. Mr. Dyer is our NWRA representative for Hanson. Thoughts?
Not at this time, that would be productive. Right at the moment, we'll be meeting next week to further discuss the finding from Interbloom about, removing the dams, but we're not working in a vacuum. We're trying to be open-minded, and we're trying to look at things with a regional view. We're not looking just at, oh yeah, let's remove the dams and we're going to call it dams.
But as far as moving towards Superfund status, has the NWRA taken a position on that or no?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Not officially.
Okay.
But we'll be meeting next week, and we'll be discussing our meetings with the EPA throughout the 3 countries.
Okay, all right. And did you have your hand up, sir? I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. We've been talking about 3 communities, so I guess if there's a Superfund site, there must be some geographic area that it encompasses. Are we talking about Pembroke? Nobody's mentioned Pembroke.
They did mention Pembroke, yeah.
How are they involved? Isn't the site just
Indian Head River goes right down through Pembroke and to the North River.
into Norwell and Situate and Cape Cod and Providence?
Goes right down there.
So, I guess my question is how is Pembroke have a seat at the table and not Marshfield and Norwell and Situate and Provincetown and Brewster?
Well, right now we're faced with the physical contamination on Hanson and Hanover soils.
Right. So
That's the main thing that we're dealing with.
So if there's opposition, shouldn't it be only the communities that have physical property where the site is?
I don't, who can answer why Pembroke was identified as one of the
And
towns?
why not Bellingham?
If you look at the river Pembroke, they're south of Hanover, Hanson, and Pembroke. And so Pembroke, if the contamination in downstream of Factory Pond Dam, that the property boundary between Pembroke and Hanson also goes, my understanding, to the
Yes,
center line
it
of
does.
the river. So some of their property is also potentially contaminated along that sediment.
Again, not to give this, but also in Norwell and Marshfield and Situate.
But that hasn't yet been determined in terms of the extent of the contamination.
So the site does in fact include property in Pembroke?
The Massachusetts definition of site is wherever contamination is coming from present. So by our regulations, the site would include the contamination in the Indian River corridor downstream of Factory Pond Dam.
It's all the way to the ocean.
So but it hasn't been identified to what extent that contamination, how far it has gone. That's one of the outstanding questions that EPA will be addressing.
So just from an
And I'm sorry, sir, if you could state your name and your address, and I would ask that you try to, questions should come through the chair to these folks, and that we keep a relatively succinct question. Okay.
So, Paul McGovern, 948 Winter Street, and my question, I guess, to the board, to the EPA board, is would everybody in the North River corridor be allowed to oppose listing? Or is it just the sites that have physical real estate where the contamination is now? In my concern, I'm behind this project 1,000,000%, but you can imagine, that someone in Norwell or Situate may be opposed.
Can I just say one thing about that? I don't think that you're going to find people in Norwell and Situate who want the contamination to continue. I think if we're properly educating the public and letting them know what's going on, even all the way downriver that far, they're going to be on board with it, because I don't know, I mean, I grew up in Norwell, I lived on Church Street in Norwell. I heard that site blow up back in, what, 1969? I heard it, and we were all in the neighborhood like, what was that? Nobody, nobody knew what it was. So nobody wants the contamination to continue. I can't imagine anybody who would. What mindset would want someone to allow that to continue?
I agree.
So I think if we, as long as we get like the hearings and the education and we let people know what is going on and why we're doing it, I think we'll be okay. I really do.
Mr. Melisi.
Yeah, I just had a question. Sorry, Franklin, 604 Brook Street. So I would hate to have this Superfund be imposed because of residents who believe that their property taxes are going to go down, the value of the homes are going to go down. Does the government have any information they can provide to the citizens during those public comments that says, listen, it might go down when it's initially designated, but after the site is cleaned up, it comes back even better or something like that?
Matt, you and I can both answer that question because we had that same discussion about taking the dams down. And, what would happen when they took down the dams, and they did studies and they showed that the real estate values, once the rivers were flowing properly, actually went up because everything was returned to the natural state and property values rose.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different because you're designating a piece of the town.
Well, the problem is that there has been,
has a bad connotation to it.
Sorry, that has been the roadblock to this all along is property values. So we're going to have to just steamroll over that. It has to be fixed.
I'm just asking if the government has any data to back up saying that it may decrease the property value by a certain percentage until it cleans up.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Melisi. I think there is, it may be a bit antiquated, but there is that stigma, the Superfund stigma, am I going to be able to sell my property if they know that I'm right along where it's being cleaned up, or if I'm even in a town that's associated with it, which I think is why Hanover, fought it so bitterly for so many years. And I think, that is going to, I don't think it changes what the right thing for us to do. We've discussed this as a board, and we've discussed, there's no world in which the legacy we want to leave behind is that we didn't do the right thing to clean this up. There's just that's not the legacy we want.
And I think the bottom line is, calling it a Superfund site doesn't make the contamination any worse, right? Whatever's there is already there.
Yeah.
So we'd like to think we're part of the solution and not the problem. There certainly are long-term studies, as the gentleman mentioned, that talk about certainly in the long run, you're going to come out better that it's being addressed. But even in the short term, faced with the prospect of a fence and a lock, or a multi-year cleanup effort, you're better off sort of doing something about it.
Right.
And I guess, again, that's maybe sort of the bottom line is, some people sort of talking about stigma. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is, I think we've tried to do better on clarifying residents, liability or lack thereof, certain protections available to residential or municipal landowners. Most of the horror stories you ever hear about Superfund ensnaring, a little guy are 40-year-old stories. So I think, nowadays banks are more sophisticated. Everyone's sort of more sophisticated. It's a fact of life. You saw Mandy's statistic. There's 41 Superfund sites in Massachusetts. I don't know if that was a bigger or smaller number than you thought.
Continues in all those communities.
I do think to the extent we have that public forum, if there's some kind of information like that, that could be shared, I think that would be very helpful. Mr. Amato.
Just for these questions that we're asking around the bend, if you go on the EPA website, all these questions that you answered that people are asking right now, it's a very interesting website. It'll tell you how the Superfund sites work, what takes place, the public involvement and everything. So that's a good suggestion.
That's a good suggestion, Mr. Amato. Maybe, Ms. Green, I wonder if we ought to start a page on our website that's exclusively dedicated to this, which could have the QR code, links to the fireworks, whatever other updates we need, a recording of this meeting, et cetera, because if we're part of educating people, so we need to do whatever we can to make that information accessible. Mr. Weeks, I can see the bubbling over there.
Yeah, for the sake of just not belaboring, and I know you guys are all busy and you're probably trying to get home sooner than later. I just want to say, the fact that you're all here shows how serious the nature of the site is. So I'm eager to get the process going around the community engagement, the community involvement, and people are going to get their questions answered. To your point, I keep going back to the public comment and having more of these forum meetings. So I would just say, the fact that we're even having this conversation shows how serious we're, not only we're taking it, but the state's taking this. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't a dangerous issue. And I think we all agree that safety comes first before money, always.
Yep.
So we're gonna put people's safety first. So really thank you guys for being here and being part of this.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else before we put a bow on that? No, okay. Ms. Green, yes, please.
Just want to reiterate too, during the presentation, they went over the funds that were available, how it's been spent, and there's $10.21 million left. The EPA is stepping forward because other than what they're presenting, there's no more funds to clean that site.
Right.
So what happens down the line, it sits there and grows and gets worse.
That's
So,
my point.
Ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Ignoring it is not going to make it go away, so that's something really important for folks to think about, is there is no more money to continue cleaning the site, and the EPA is stepping forward to let us know we have a way this site can continue to be cleaned up. Think about it and really let us know which way you want to go. So that's
Well, those are perfect closing remarks, Ms. Green, and we appreciate that. And we really do appreciate your time and effort and partnership on this, and we look forward to a partnership that I hope is not long, but is fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
How did he know to come?
I don't know.
He must pay attention to the agenda, fireworks.
Maybe.
Fireworks discussion. What's the matter?
All right. So we're going to move right along, or attempt to do so. So next up on our agenda is Regional Agreement Committee Representative. We've lost Ms. Green, so we'll have to do that in a minute. We've got a request by Hanson Troop 68 to reserve Town Hall Green for its annual pumpkin sale on 10/14, 10:15, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. And we have got a one-day liquor license for the Michelle Pierce wedding on 11/11. I will entertain a motion to approve the liquor license.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm shuffling along here, trying to make up time until Miss Green comes, because two of these items require her.
What about the meeting minutes?
That was my next thing. Thank you, Mr. Weeks. I will entertain a motion to approve the open session minutes from August 29th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I will entertain a motion to approve the September 5th, 2023 open session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I will, okay, great. All in favor? Great. I will entertain a motion to approve the September 12th, 2023 minutes.
I got a little comments on that one.
Oh, you had a comment? Was it something material, Mr. Hill?
I have a lot of little comments that are not material, but for this one I do.
Okay.
The last full paragraph on page 2 of the September 12th minutes,
Are they all in the same packet?
Yeah, they're all.
it says,
they're all in one chunk.
it's comparing it was about the 5% and that our town of Hanson is well below the average tax rate. That's compared to other towns in Massachusetts, I'm assuming, just not well below the average tax rate of what?
Where are you, Mr., I'm sorry.
Oh, it's up here.
The last full paragraph on page 2.
Page 2, yep.
But where your thumb is.
Okay.
that paragraph.
The town of Hanson is well below the average tax rate. It seems like there should be a qualification in Massachusetts and the Northeast and the United States and.
Well, this is minutes to a meeting. If he did not articulate that it was the state or a region or anything else, we can't add that to minutes.
Okay, he didn't stipulate, okay.
So this is, you know, an iteration of what was said at the,
Okay.
at the meeting. I think he was insinuating that it was
Massachusetts.
area towns.
Yeah.
That was what I felt that he was saying, that it was similar towns, but I may,
Okay, given that, I think my other
Yeah.
change is very similar, so I'm just gonna let you look at my changes, and if they're,
I mean, the only other thing I could suggest is to perhaps ask Ms. McDowell to listen to the meeting one more time with particular attention to that particular, you know, conversation, and if there is some additional detail that she might be able to add it in.
I'm not gonna be here.
Does that sound okay, or?
perfect, yep.
Okay,
I'm
all
sorry
right.
to interrupt them.
All right, so I think I had a motion and a second on the September 12th minutes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, okay. All right, and Ms. Green, thank you for joining us, and we had a couple of items that we kind of skipped over until you could rejoin us. So, Regional Agreement Committee Representative.
Okay, so I did reach out to the superintendent to ask him about possibly changing the night of the meetings. He deferred it to a discussion with the committee last evening. The consensus of the committee is that they're not able to change the meeting night from Monday nights because a number of them have engagements and commitments on other nights. What was suggested is that there is enough notice for it to continue on Mondays to give somebody the opportunity maybe to alter their schedule so that they could attend the next meeting, which is Monday, November 6th at 5 o'clock. That it was the consensus of that committee that evening, that they are not able to change the night for to accommodate a member of the Hanson Select Board.
Okay. Well, I guess we've got a very strong message there. So did anybody have a desire to join the regional committee? Okay. So I think that's where we're at. Okay, so we will move along to discuss the VTOLO bill, a sign-on letter in support of legislation of affordable electrical aggregation programs. Ms. Green.
Okay, so a bill has been introduced by the legislator to somewhat make the aggregate process a little bit easier to obtain. Right now, as the process is in place, as you know, the town of Hanson is going through the aggregate, basically, energy process. And I think we're going on almost 2 years of this process. And this legislation points out that the DPU, there's a number of towns in a queue waiting for, basically for their aggregate plan to be reviewed, approved, and then moving on so that the towns can finally see the benefits of an aggregate program. So this legislation introduces a way for the aggregate program to be easily obtainable, be available to more towns, and there's this letter of support basically is just saying that the town of Hanson does support making the aggregate process a little bit easier, making it available to other towns and cities that want to join in the process, and just basically looking at how it can benefit towns as far as saving them money on energy.
I feel like I'd need to know a lot more about H 3852 before I'm gonna put my John Hancock on a letter of support. The devil's in the details on that, and I'm sorry, I'm just not a joiner. And this sort of seems like a pro forma letter that we're sending to support, and I'm not saying I've got anything against it, but I just don't know enough about it to be putting my name on it. Certainly if the board wants to take a vote and you want me as the chair to sign on behalf of the select board, I would be more than glad to do that. This is just one gal's opinion. I just don't know enough about it.
Can I say?
Please, Ms. Rain.
There might be a good reason why nearly half of the cities and towns in the Commonwealth do not yet have a program at all. What is attached to this program? That would be my question.
That's kind of where I was going with this, is right now, it's very much a hometown, like the town has to, it's driven by the town, and there's hearings, and there's all of that stuff. And I just don't know if this is a sort of like, in fact makes it easier, or in fact dictates that a town might need to do it. And I would really prefer that each town have their own ability to make that decision. So that's why, I don't know, because I just don't know what H 38, 58, 52 is. And so could we get a little bit more color commentary around the language, or if you have that now, please?
I certainly can. I mean, basically, the bill is 20 pages long, so I am perfectly happy to print it out so everyone can look through it, and possibly answer the questions that you have.
If you look at, one, two, like the fifth paragraph down, it says under H 3852, right off the bat, any changes would have to be approved by the DPU. You know, I mean, it's all about controlling the whole process.
Who wants us to do this? Who's requesting this?
So
that's a great question.
So basically, it came from Rachel Ferdinand, who is with Good Energy, and they are who is working with us on the aggregate. And it is supported by Mary Ann DeMasi as well, who is on our energy committee.
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Maybe we can have somebody just come in and just talk to us about it?
Sure.
That has a little bit more.
And I can appreciate that Ms. Damasio supports it, but I would, if she's supporting it as a member of a committee, I'd want to know, does the entire committee support it? And if so, why?
Can certainly find out.
Appreciate it. It's a good idea, and I just want to know.
Well, we don't know if it's a good idea, because we don't know what it is, but it could be a good idea.
Well, in theory, I mean,
Yeah.
this sounds good. I just don't know if it's...
Yeah.
Lots of things sound good.
Exactly.
Oh, boy, okay. Moving on.
Especially white chocolate, but we all know
I have no white chocolate to offer you,
White
sir.
chocolate's
I'm sorry.
delicious.
good ideas that are really bad.
Honestly, this isn't on the agenda, but I don't think it requires any deliberation. The truth is, white chocolate is not chocolate, and that is that. Okay?
So moved.
And we're gonna move on.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Take the vote.
Now, October special
Declaration.
town meeting preview. We do not have Mr. Keeley. Was he planning on joining us?
Yes, he was.
In person, or, okay. I have put my tap shoes on as much as I possibly can, and we have covered a number of subjects.
Kate is joining
Committee
us.
updates, you want to do that?
We could do committee updates.
I got
That is-
nothing.
We're just, okay, so you just, okay. Committee updates, we've got Economic Development Committee. While we had Hanson Day, it was
It
was a wonderful day. It was well attended. I want to thank Kevin Cohen and Chris Ernst, who did a lot of good work trying to help put that event together with me. And I want to thank the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, who were able to very quickly accommodate our request to bring that event inside. I think I requested it on Wednesday for Saturday. So it was great. It was everything good about Hanson. All kinds of volunteer organizations. We had Plymouth County Sheriff there. It was like a dog-a-palooza. There were so many dogs there. It was crazy. We had Buddy and Friends with their dogs. We had Plymouth County Sheriff. We had our comfort dog made an appearance. So for those of you that weren't there, you missed it. So anyway, it was a great day. Lots of happy little people and happy older people because the little people were happy, so it was a nice day. High Street Park Committee, Mr. Weeks.
So if you don't mind, can I do High Street and Transfer Station, because it's minimal. So High
Yeah.
Street, we were supposed to have a meeting, we have another meeting tomorrow, but it was right smack dab in the hurricane, so we decided to make a last minute,
Okay, yeah.
chance to just reschedule that. So we're meeting tomorrow to try to figure that out, get some updates there. And Transfer Station, we haven't met yet, we're still waiting to get our new committee formed. So we're just trying to schedule that.
Okay, that sounds great. Then that brings us to the Highway Committee.
We have not met.
So where are we at on the Highway Committee, Ms. Green? What's happening there? Or Mrs. Rain, or whoever wants to whom it may concern.
Waiting for plans.
So the Highway Committee, basically the highway is having a feasibility study done for the new highway department to be located where they are now. I haven't seen the report yet. I believe it's close to being finalized. I haven't seen it yet, so hopefully we will see that very soon.
Okay, all right. Then that brings us to McQuon Property Reuse Committee, which I don't think we've received any applications for. And so this is my pitch. If you're out there and you might be on Facebook and you're suggesting things that we should do with the McQuon property or what we shouldn't do with the McQuon property, we would love to hear your opinion as a member of the McQuon Reuse Committee. So please go on our website and fill out that application. It's under volunteer employment opportunities on the Town of Hanson website. And then your ideas may come to fruition as a member of that committee. Although Facebook is a wonderful venue, that is not where the decisions are made. Town meeting, committee meetings, and at the polls, that's where decisions are made. So that's my pitch for the McQuon Property Reuse Committee. And just as an FYI, no final decisions have been made about that property. So once the building is taken down, this is a fresh, clean footprint, and sky's the limit. We can do whatever we want with it with voter approval and adequate funding. But aside from that, sky's the limit. Recreation Committee. Sorry, Alex Stewart, but we have not had anybody else apply. So you are a committee of one. And we've already gotten the Transfer Station Task Force. And Ms. Green, we are, am I correct that our next meeting after town meeting is our strategic planning session?
October 17th.
Should we have another meeting in between that? It seems like we might have some town business we have to attend to after town meeting, but before the strategic planning. You will not be here on the 17th?
I'm going to be in Tennessee.
Well, that's wonderful for you. It's a bummer for us.
Sorry.
So
the 10th?
Yeah,
Last
are
year
we
did
able
a meeting
to?
before the strategic.
That's what I'm saying.
Like on the same day.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking.
Oh, go ahead, do it that night.
I was thinking there may be some actions after town meeting. I mean, how do people feel? If you guys just want to go with the 17th and skip a couple weeks, it's fine. I just, I feel, well, I mean, even just from tonight, we've got follow-up items on the aggregation, the regional agreement. There was something else I asked you to put on the next agenda. Voting on the Hanson, on the Whitman Middle School, and that's, those are just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other things.
Sounds like we need one.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to, Mr. Weeks is being suspiciously silent.
Is the 17th?
I love meetings.
Is there a bet going on? I'm just curious. Okay.
No comment yet.
The more the better.
All right.
That's fantastic. Who wants to go home?
Mr. George.
It's football season.
What do you think?
He loves meetings too.
Yeah, I know how much you love your meetings. I know.
She's not here, can I sit in her chair?
So you can kick me under the table? Absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
I'll go blind looking at
Oh my gosh, okay. All right, so why don't we tentatively plan on one for the
Being in the front row at the
yeah,
movie theater.
Okay, and are we planning on posting prior to town meeting for a select board meeting, just in case there's some type of little fire drill, which I'm hoping there isn't.
Yeah, we have that on upcoming meetings, October 2nd, 6 PM for the select board. so
Okay, fantastic.
Such a thing.
All right, well, I guess we're just going to have to dive right in. And who would like to play the role of, or do we really have to go through every single motion?
No, why don't
do you
we
want to, Ms. Long? Okay, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, they've been reviewed by town council. You've taken a look at them. You've taken a look at them. I mean, we've got this star-studded team looking at them. And Mr. Keeley's going to deliver the product that everybody's come up with. And I guess, you know, other than that, I don't know. Is there anything about the town meeting warrant that we need to talk about?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Basically, that came up today. Okay, so which article was it that has the 50 cents? Is it number 3? No.
Oh, boy.
Article 17.
The 17.
All right. All right, Article 17 is the capital from the Whitman Hanson Regional School District.
Yeah.
When the amounts were being put together in the Excel spreadsheet, if you don't have, unfortunately, if you don't have the exact format, what it does is it rounds off the amount.
Okay.
So it was discovered today that that occurred, so the amount, total allocation should be $322,283.50.
Okay, I thought, all right.
So-
I mean, it's not a dire tragedy.
No,
but-
it's not fatal,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
my feeling is we just make a motion on the floor to amend the total amount to equal $322,283.50.
83.50 or 82?
283.50.
And which one is the additional 50 cents?
Do you remember which one
I
it
can't
was?
believe I'm talking about.
Can I interject?
Oh, absolutely, Kate.
You guys, sorry. So, remember, the motion, you don't need to do an amendment because the motion.
That's what I thought.
really-
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really clarifies what you're asking for, because remember, your warrant article could simply be that the town vote a sum of money. It doesn't even specify.
Right, so just add it to the motion?
Yeah, just
Yep.
make the
Okay.
motion very specific and have Sean say the numbers are a little bit different than the warrant as a preview, and then you'll be all set.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And then, Ms. Green, I think there was something that the Professional Administrative Union had reached out. There was a, something in here. And I
Does it
believe,
have to do with the vacation?
no, no, it was in the wage and personnel, which Ms. Buzian had sent an email to you.
So that, I think that it was a question of whether that was going to be across the board, but I think Kate had answered it, that it only applies to wage and personnel, and does not apply to the CBA units.
Yeah, and I reached out to the union rep, John Roberts, and told him that this is just non-union personnel, those types of benefits.
No, I'm sorry, I probably should have been a little clearer with my question. There was a position that was in here, and it was miscategorized, and Anne Marie had sent an email last Friday, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, she's saying, it was just an oversight. She said, all right, I'm going to have to bring up the email now.
Oh, I think it was one of the library positions that was still in the wage and personnel that need to be removed at the May town meeting. I'm sorry, the Camp Kawani event coordinator.
Camp Kawani event coordinator
is still
under wage and personnel.
So, I mean, that was just recently put into the union, so it will come out in the May town meeting.
Okay, so we're not gonna do anything to the October town meeting?
We won't change it at this point.
Okay.
We can change it in May.
Okay.
I believe unless Kate feels that we need to change it in October, but.
The collective bargaining agreement would supersede, so it's, you know, it's
Okay.
just a cleanup. I'm not overly worried about it, but yes, we can clean that up in May.
All right, that's awesome. Anything else, Ms. Green or Ms. Federoff or Ms. Sloan? Any burning issues?
That's all I have.
Do you guys want to walk through each article? I feel like we've been through
Again?
these like literally
Again.
5 or
I think
6
we've done
times.
it enough.
I do.
But, Mr. Kincher, we've got you here, and I understand that you actually have our certified free cash. So did you want to tell us what our certified free cash is?
Drum roll, please.
I don't have it yet, it's not certified yet, but I have an idea of what it's gonna be. I went back and forth with it, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be good news. I mean, I'm looking at like around 2 million for free cash, so I'm just waiting for Ron, keep checking my emails.
Wow, the last I heard it was 1.8. It keeps going up, so that's great. Okay.
We like it.
Yeah,
So,
it's going in the right direction. Okay, anything else? Okay, Mr. Melissy, did you have anything?
No, the capital, I know there was some discussion on the capital items last meeting, so I can ask any of those questions you guys have, if there's anything like that.
No, that was the question, I believe, generated perhaps by an attendee, and I think we were okay with it.
We broke it out into 2 different things, but not here.
Well, I'll make a motion to rename free cash or something else.
All right, you're being very controversial now, Mr. Melissy.
I have one question.
Yes.
I thought Article 17 was being split into 2, but I don't see the second half, or I don't see the first half. I see Article 17. and we're talking about-
Yes, it's Article 18, Mr. Hill?
It
So
is.
Article 17 is what I would classify standard
Okay.
capital improvement items, and then Article 18 is the infield mixed dirt, which was the article that you had
Yeah,
asked
that's-
about and that Mr. Young had asked
Yes.
about.
I do
Okay,
have-
so that-
I do have one thing about the school items.
Yes.
If those, and people can take this however they want, if those touch view panels are paid for at this town meeting, they will not be installed until the summer of next year. Take that however you.
Well, that is interesting and extremely controversial. So what you're saying is, we're spending money for this now, but in fact, they won't be purchased until, well, we don't know when they're going to be purchased, but they won't be installed until after the kids are out of school.
The update that I had at the capital improvement, Mr. Heel can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the shipment for the high school was supposed to be here in the summertime. It was stuck in Panama, and if they get that shipment, they will not be able to install them until the summer of next year.
Okay.
So, depending on how that goes, I don't know, so for the high school itself, if we approve of that May town meeting, I'm not saying to do this, but what I'm saying is, if we approve of May town meeting, does the money get released July 1st, if we approve of the May town meeting, capital items, or do they get released that May town meeting date?
It all depends on how it's worded. If it's worded as FY '23 article, it can be right away.
Okay.
And if it's not, it goes July 1st.
Okay, July 1st. So, my assumption would be is that they would order them starting July 1st.
How do we know, I mean, that's quite a gap in dates. How do we know that price is still valid?
Exactly.
I mean, the supply chain is just crazy.
It could not be, but what I'm, if we are hurting for free cash, that could potentially be an option to kind of relieve some of those funds there and say we can appropriate. Or we could do, for example, the high school, because Whitman's already paid for the high school touch views. So Whitman funded all the touch view panels for all of their schools, including their half of the high school, their 60%, whatever it is for the high school. So if this town meeting, we decided to buy the touch view panels for the high school, so they can order them now and install them next summer, and then hit Hanson, Indian Head and Middle School, we would wait until May and then have those ordered. That's also an option, we can chop them up.
Mr. Kinshirf, your perspective.
So, so speaking of like saving the free cash, and this might be for Kate too, like on Article 17, it says 322 and 283 coming from free cash, but we actually have some articles that we want to reappropriate for, so we'd like the motion to be like, move that we move 82,000 from unappropriated articles voted at XYZ, and then 239,000 from free cash. So I'd like to, so are we able to, in the motion of this article, I know it says all coming from free cash, but are we able to use other sources of funds?
Oh, okay, so, before the second microphone was put up to you all, I could hear the board, but I couldn't hear you all in the audience, Eric and Frank, so well. But can I repeat the question so I'm making sure I'm answering it correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so your question is, under Article 17, the funding source is listed as free cash for those various projects. And because of the delay in execution of the one particular project, and I couldn't hear which one it was, but because that is going to be delayed for some time, Eric is asking whether or not we could substitute a different funding source instead of free cash, namely these unexpended prior articles. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll just rephrase it. So basically, along with this article, the way it's written, I'd like the motion to just say, we're going to appropriate 239,000 from free cash and 82,000 from articles voted at previous town meeting to fund this article. That's all. Can we have a motion that says that?
So, and I don't want to step on Sean's toes, who's not here, because the moderator is really the authority on scope. But I will say this, one of the concerns about scope questions is, and one of the reasons why you tend to draft published warrant articles in a more broad way, because you discover later on that there are these little snafus, right, during the 14-day posting period. So I would defer to Sean to see if the use of those different funds causes him anxiety at all. I would suggest that because unexpended funds, it's not like a raise and appropriate, which might concern people more than unexpended funds, if you know what I mean, because that changes the tax rate, et cetera, et cetera. It might be acceptable to him, but I would have to defer to him.
So,
sorry.
What about the option of using those unexpended funds as capital improvement funds for fiscal year 25? So for this special town meeting, we can use the funds that we have for free cash to fund the school items that are available, and then fiscal year 25 capital improvement, we can use those unexpended funds.
You can do that.
Specifically call them those unexpended funds. So there's no making motions or anything.
So
the articles
if it makes it administratively easier, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's easier for people to understand too.
Yep.
You know, instead of mixed, you know, like this is unexpended, this is free cash, this is, but I mean, it's up to you. What do you guys want to do? What's the board think?
I like that idea better, the cleaner idea, just leaving it.
Make it clean, okay.
Yeah, because
you guys agree?
In that way, we're not losing any money this town meeting. Essentially, what we're doing is just taking an additional 18,000 we spent for that and just roll over to the next year.
Yeah.
It'll be one less thing we have to fund in May when it comes to the touch panels and the network switches. And by the way, I just want to make it perfectly clear. The network switches, those items that we listed at the CIC in that matrix were the priority for us there. So the touch screens are the two bottom ones. Those network switches are absolutely.
Okay, all right, okay. So you're saying if we were going to do something, then it would be the touch view? Okay.
Everybody knows what happened 2 years ago at the school and their data thing that they had going on.
Yep.
So they definitely need those networks.
So is there any way for us to get a sanity check that the price that we were given last, whatever it was, March, is still accurate for these touch view?
They actually are. So Gideon actually did a really nice presentation in front of the CIC meeting.
Okay.
And he's the technology director for the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. He came to our last meeting before we gave you guys the recommendations and gave us a breakdown of all the costs.
Okay.
And they actually went down significantly, not significantly, way down from what they were last time, when it comes to the touch fee payments. So,
Okay.
I think Eric's idea is, you know, we could take the unexpended cash that we have, roll over to the next year's, and we can just, you know, use the free cash this time to fund those things, so they're installed next year before the next school year happens.
And do we have the FinCom recommendations?
Motions. They're in that one.
Are there any that we have not recommended because we're waiting for FinCom? Because we ought to go through those. You don't think there are?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing jumped out at me.
Okay, I thought there was at least a couple that we were like, oh, let's see what FinCom says. But I guess we kind of got a sense from Kevin at the last meeting, even though they hadn't officially voted. Let me just make
There's
sure.
a couple that say that we recommended, but no vote number after it. Like on page 15, Article 15.
Wait a minute, which page?
I missed one. I did update that.
Yeah, it says voted to recommend, just doesn't have a vote count.
So it just should be like 5, whatever the vote was. 5-0 or,
It's just missing from this version of the...
well, double check it because it may have been the meeting Dave wasn't at, so we've got
Basically
to.
didn't recommend much of what we recommended.
I'm gonna say they recommended that one as well.
Yeah.
They voted the same as they did for Article 16.
I just want to make sure we don't get to town meeting and people are like, why didn't you say whether you recommended this or not? I don't see any other ones other than the one you pointed out, Mr. Hill.
That's the one I see also.
So sorry, just one thing.
Oh, please.
I'm going to be making a motion to amend the retained earnings of the Camp Kawani fund as well. I have to actually talk to Dory today. Wanted to use that number of retained earnings so we can put it all into the fund. I'm not sure if it's different than 50,000.
So which article is that?
I don't have it in front of me, sorry.
All right, hold on.
I forgot my general cut. No, thank you. I have no copies of myself, so.
Frank, can you drive the mic to your place?
Please, like, sit up at the table or something?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm struggling.
I bet Frank doesn't hear very often that you can't hear him.
Really, honestly. So, I'll just get right back up after this. So, I'm going to be making a motion to amend the retained earnings of the Camp Kawani Commission to be the exact amount of what we have in our retained earnings to bring it over to the October town meeting.
Okay.
That made sense.
And let me see.
I don't know what article that is. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Doesn't make sense, you only retained earnings if you're gonna fund something. So right now, you're gonna fund code wages for 50,000.
Yeah.
So that's it. When retained earnings get certified, you can spend them at May, but unless you have plans to spend those retained earnings, no vote is needed at town meeting.
So we have 50,000 right now to put the money into the Cove staff.
Yes.
If we have a certified free retained earnings of, let's say, $60,000, we can't put that $60,000 into the Cove staff instead of the 50?
That would be a scope question.
So I don't even see Camp Kawani's budget on the,
There definitely should be an article there, 2024?
Number 24.
oh, did I scroll past it too quickly? Okay. To see if the town will vote to transfer from Camp Kawani retained earnings in the amount of $50,000 to
You're saying you want
supplement
60?
No, I'm saying I want what we have in our retained earnings fund to go to that line item in the budget.
To go to the budget?
To go to the budget.
So, again, that would be a scope issue for Sean, but you have those retained earnings currently?
I know we have 50,000, right, Eric, in retained earnings?
Right, well, basically, she needed 50,000 to fund the Camp Kawani wages.
Yeah.
So she's gonna take that from retained earnings. Once we get the retained earnings certified, there will be unexpended retained earnings. I'm hoping it'll be like another 145,000 that can be used at another town meeting. So I think the issue was, there wasn't enough money in the budget for the wages. This article addresses it, and then at the May town meeting, you'll have extra money that you could spend at the May town meeting.
Yeah. Do you need it before then?
Because the $10,000 that you get at the May town meeting should be able then to carry you through for the balance of May and June, right? I mean, $10,000 isn't that much money.
I'll have to do my research on that because, well, that is an additional 2.5 weeks to pay for lifeguards for that. So I'll have to.
But you're not gonna have your lifeguards starting until May.
Correct. So if we go to May town meeting and they start in May, we're gonna have to have the funds in the Cove staff budget for the end of, all through May and then into June, right? So that would be, let's say, 7 weeks of us having to fund that budget for them if we don't have the retained earnings. So we on our line item right now in the Camp Quaney budget, we have negative $33,000 into the Cove staff because we have the retained earnings. So we're gonna be putting the $50,000 into that negative 33, which will give us, my math is right, $17,000. Thank you. And that $17,000 will have to make us through May and June before we can actually use the rest of the budget in July for the new fiscal year. Does that make sense, or am I sounding crazy right now?
No, you're not sounding crazy. It does make sense.
It makes sense. So when we see where you are in May, and there's a lot of options that we can do. We can do line item transfers, wait for town meeting, or whatever.
Yeah, that's
see
fine.
how it's trending in May, and we can make this. Yeah.
Ignore me. I'm tired. I'm sorry.
Because
I've been working all day.
My concern is if you don't have the retained earnings yet, you can't appropriate the retained earnings.
Yeah, they're gonna be certain. I'm waiting for that letter from the DLS, but they'll be certified before town meeting.
Oh, they will, okay.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, there are possibilities that if you can't make it to May, whatever it is, 15th, you can do a reserve fund transfer and all of those things that we just talked about. But I bet if you have a single salary line item, I bet you have enough to get you through town meeting and then do a supplemental appropriation at the May town meeting, which will carry you for the balance of May into June.
Yeah, just to be clear, we don't need to move any money from like free cash into the Camp Quaney budget. We would just have to move some line items down in our operating up to our salary. So I'm not asking for additional money from the town, just move stuff around, so thanks.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Any other controversial articles you want to suggest, Mr. Morrissey? Okay.
Baseball fields in McQuon. No, just kidding.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just wanted to provide answers to Articles 15 and 16. The Finance Committee voted 5-0 to recommend both of those articles.
15 and 16, can you?
Which are the wage and personnel.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right, that's great. All right, great. Did anybody have anything else about town meeting that they wanted to talk about? All right, and Ms. Green, I know you had suggested, I think it just hit my foot, Ann, I'm not sure how to get that.
Took a ride underneath your feet.
Okay. I know you've got it out there on social media. Keep getting it out there. We want to drive up that attendance. And then you've got it in the newspaper. And I think you said you connected with cable.
Right.
And if we got it on the sign, I haven't checked.
It is on the sign
Okay,
right
all
outside
right.
the entrance to the middle school.
All right, so if we can just keep pressing on that, that would be awesome. And you may want to think about this. In the past, we had reached out to the district and asked if they could send a message to Hanson parents. And particularly if there's going to be childcare, which I don't know if we've made a provision for
Yep,
that.
it's all up-
But that's
that's all
very
done.
important to let people know because that opens up a whole avenue for folks that otherwise might not think they can attend.
So that is on all of the information that we have out there, that childcare. Emily's been working on basically the postings. We also have our board upstairs and by the front door, as soon as you walk in, there's a big board that kind of hits you in the face that talks about town meeting.
All right, so maybe reach out to the schools, because that might be a hot date night for somebody to go to town meeting with their spouse. So, okay?
So we've got it covered.
All right. All right, awesome. So with that, I will, I've got the town administrator's report, Ms. Green. I was going to give you short shrift there.
Okay.
So I'll sign off then, you guys, unless you need me for anything else.
I think we're all set, Ms. Federoff. Thank you, Ms. Sloan, and thank you, Ms. Federoff. We'll see you Monday.
Second.
We'll see you Monday. Yep.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, Kate.
Ms. Green.
Okay, all right, town administrator report. So first and foremost, I really want to recognize Lynn and Emily for all the work that they're doing preparing for town meeting. Again, they have been handling the development for the social media postings, getting the warrants ready, sending it out for printing, the motions, working with Kate. So these two ladies really recognize them for all their work, putting the binders together for the Finance Committee, Select Board, Sean Keeley, our town accountant. So kudos to both of them for all the work that they've done.
Thank you, guys.
Definitely.
A lot of work recognized. We have in Town Hall new phones and a new phone system.
I noticed that because I had green sleeves playing as hold music when I called.
So again,
Yes, I'm hoping we might be able to get some better music choices, but that's okay.
you know, it's better than the static we had before.
Okay.
So I really want to recognize IT Director Steve Moberg and our IT Assistant Therese for their hard work on this, installing it. A lot of the work was done on Friday with putting in the new phones. The town hall employees had a training today of how to work the phones. You can do a lot online. And so we had presentation. We've been able to experience the phones. There's no static. You can hear everybody. It's a very upgraded system from what we had. So
How are
again,
people feeling about it? How's the staff feeling about it?
I haven't heard any complaints so far.
Good, okay.
So,
like it?
I like it.
Is
I
it
like the
easy to
fact-
use, kind of intuitive, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And messages come right to our email, so
Oh, wow.
forward it much easier than.
Oh, so is it a transcription of like whatever somebody leaves on your voicemail will get emailed to you? That's
You have the
awesome.
voicemail, right? You have both?
Yeah.
We have
Wow.
both, yes.
That's great.
So it's a huge step up. Again, so kudos to those two for the amount of time that they put in for this. It's been a long time coming, but it's done.
Good.
Again, so kudos. So a lot of good things happening at Town Hall. The September Hanson Happenings newsletter is out. It's been blasted to all of our social media platforms. So there's a lot of information in there, so.
That looked great.
Please,
Did you
let
guys
me
get an
know.
opportunity to read it? It looks good. It's
I didn't see it.
very information laden. Yep, it got posted, I think it got posted today.
On
Yeah,
Facebook?
on Facebook, yep.
I didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, Facebook, information on our website, so it's out there, and we're already working on the October newsletter.
Awesome.
So regarding the McQuon demolition, the ARPA application that I submitted for reimbursement for a portion of the funds for the McQuon demolition has made it through the first level of review, and it's been passed on to the second level.
Awesome.
So that's exciting. I don't know how long the second level review takes, but at least it's on the second level. I handed out a little packet earlier. The building department will be making a small change to their entryway. That work is going to be done by Kerry Glass and Charlie Baker. They're basically moving the very small security door from facing the administrative assistant's desk to when you first walk in, the little door will be right there. So that way, it makes the office a little bit more secure.
So a little similar to like conservation's type of setup, where it's a little more, like you can't get past that really?
Yeah, like the Board of Health,
Yep,
yes.
okay,
yes. So
yep,
that will
yep.
stop people from
That's what I
basically
meant. I
walking
don't know
right
what I
into the
just said,
office
but-
and hovering over our administrative
Yeah.
assistant. So they are going to be handling that. There's not going to be any large cost involved because those two are doing that. So you do have a little picture of what it will look like in your packet.
Ms. Green, is Mr. Baker in a union?
He is in the union.
Is Mr. Glass doing that work going to be any kind of a problem with the union?
Well, the work that Mr. Glass
You don't need to answer that
is...
here, you can check
Okay,
into
yeah.
that, but I just want to make sure there's no pitfalls for the unwary on that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Yeah.
To give an update on McQuon demolition, unfortunately, it's come to a halt because of Eversource. So when the building was closed, apparently at one point, the gas was disconnected from the building. And I believe it was Columbia Gas when that happened, but we don't have any records on it. The gas was disconnected from the building and the meter was collected. However, the gas was not shut off from the street, as far as we know. Eversource has no records. So what has to happen is Eversource has to go to McQuon, open the street up, and look at the connection before they will issue any kind of a letter to SMI that the gas connection is shut off.
Sounds expensive.
Oh, it's no cost to us.
All right, great.
Yeah, it's no cost to us.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but because we don't have any records, and they don't have any records, this has to happen. Luckily, again, our building inspector, Kerry Glass, did have a contact that he reached out to. Hopefully this week, they're gonna be getting out there to open the street up. I have alerted the superintendent to let him know that this may be happening. We don't believe it's gonna cause an entire roadblock, but I can't be sure. So until this can be identified, the demolition is on hold. The fencing is around the property, so that is there. And we'll keep people up to date as much as we can.
Okay.
So I attended the Mass Municipal Management Association meeting last Thursday, and one of the areas of focus was on talking about the shortage of firefighters and police officers and the challenges of hiring each, and what towns are doing to face those challenges and overcome. Some of the ideas are reaching out to the high schools, colleges, joining in for job fairs, things like that, and introducing the careers to high school students and college students in the early years of school. That's what some of the other communities are doing to face this. Hanson's not the only one, it is statewide as far as shortages, but very good information on that. Also, I want to circle back, public records requests. When they submit public records requests, it takes time to look at it, to see what they're looking for, and then it takes time to put together a response. We are required by law to put together a response within 10 days and to provide a fee estimate, which basically breaks down how much time it's going to take us to complete every task. That takes time. If you get 2 or 3 records requests, you have to address each one separately. So you've taken up an hour of time to put all this together. So it's not actually just collecting and searching for and compiling, it's putting together the initial request.
Right.
So there is time that's invested with that as well. Hanson Day was Saturday, the 23rd.
Are you asking, I'm sorry to interrupt, are you saying that for a reason? Are you getting an uptick in requests?
That's where that's stemming.
We have been getting a lot of records requests, and I spend a lot of time in, based on some prior decisions from the public records request, the office, the state. What we do as far as putting our fee estimates together, I think is a little bit more elaborate of what other towns have to do. So it does take time. So I want to get that out there.
So ought we revisit how elaborate our fee estimate process is and perhaps adopt what other towns are doing?
Well, we were told by the state specifically that we have to follow this format.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a choice. We were told by the state to follow this format.
But the other towns don't have to follow this format?
I don't believe they go to this length to provide the information, but we were told by the state we need to follow it.
Okay.
And so that's what we do.
I think, so I assume that this means we've had an uptick of requests, or?
Well, we receive a number of requests, but I think it's important for people to understand what goes into that request from the day we get it. You know, it's not a matter of getting up, finding the files and putting it together. We have to generate a response, and then we have to generate this fee estimate. Then we have to we have to estimate how long it's going to take us. And of course, you have to go and actually get the file, look at the file to see, is it thin, is it thick? How long is it gonna take me to go through the records to find what I'm doing? And then put that all in an estimation, and then send it out either by mail or email to the folks that have requested it.
Is that discovery time factored in as a charge?
I do add that in, yes,
Yep.
yes. For, you know, searching for and compiling, yes.
So it's a good question. I am curious about the fees though, because we have to add more administrators, administrative assistants, things like that, because everyone has a right to a public records request, obviously, but we have so much to do. I mean, it obviously costs taxpayer money. I mean, we have to hire people to meet the workload minus, these types of things. So I'm just, the reason why I'm asking is because it seems odd to bring it up right now unless you have an abundance of requests that are taking up so much time. It's also important, are our fees paying for the amount of time that is required for our assistants to actually get things done?
The best that we can estimate. The best that we can estimate. I mean, it's different. I'm as the records access officer, most of the requests come to me to look at and then determine if we can justify a fee. Or if we can't justify a fee because somebody asked for one record, then that's just sent out. But if it's a request for multiple records or a time span, and again, I'm only bringing it up just to keep you up to date on public records requests.
And to the extent it's a public record, my understanding is, for instance, something that's already publicly accessible, my understanding is that it's adequate to send a link or a link to the video recording of a meeting, or a link to the document on a website, and not to reproduce those documents. So I assume you're pursuing that avenue as well to the extent possible.
If it's available online, yes.
Yep.
Yes, a lot of the things that we get are not available online, but if they are, we do provide that information.
Did you keep logs of like how much time all this stuff takes in case we ever need to reassess fees and stuff like that to justify like a person? Okay.
I think I would kind of be curious. Like, I don't want you to, I don't want to kill an ant with a cannon, but if you have like a sense, or could get us a sense, and we're talking about our office is spending 15 hours a week? Are we talking about 20 hours a week? On average, I'd just be curious what we're talking about, for...
It's not that many hours a week.
All right,
but if I get 2 records requests, I'm now spending an hour, maybe an hour and a half, generating the response, the fee. I have to just get up and look and see, or look at the file, and then continue a response.
And is that something that you could work with Lynn and Emily to, you'd obviously vet it before it would go out, you'd QC it, but is that something that you could work with them to train them on how to retrieve some of these records?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just think about that, because you're only one person, so.
Right, but I think it's important for people to understand what goes in, what's involved. Just for education purposes. So Hanson Day was held on Saturday, the 23rd. It was at the middle school. It was very well attended, I thought. A lot of people got information. Josh Cutler, he sent along basically a recognition here for bringing the community together to celebrate the town of Hanson and keeping residents connected. Citation dated September 16th, September of 2023. This was before we had to put it to the rain date, but State Representative David DeCoste, Ronald Mariano, our Speaker of the House, and then State Representative Josh Cutler signed this. So this is to the town of Hanson for Hanson Day.
Yeah, and we appreciate Representative Cutler sending a couple of his folks by, and Representative David DeCoste coming by and rubbing elbows with folks.
Rubbing elbows. So I just also wanted to just give a correction on the announcement for the car show. I'm not spending any town funds, so my personal email address should be on there, not the Hanson email address. So it should be lgreen14@hotmail.com.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions. I think what happened was they combined last year's flyer in this year's flyer. So last year I did have Hanson, but we removed it. For this year, it's all just my personal. So I just want to update the email address to give a call to send me an email if they have any questions. And that completes my town administrator report for today.
Okay, did anybody have any questions? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and we are going to executive session pursuant to open meeting law, chapter 38, section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, building litigation discussion, and executive session pursuant to open meeting law, chapter 38, section 21A7, to review and approve executive session minutes September 5th, 2023, September 12th, 2023. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purposes just stated.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, great. We are entering executive session and we will not be returning to open session. Thank you.